In this video, we're going to take a look at how to use the Transpose tool inside of ZBrush to add some thickness to areas on our model. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this model and we're going to draw a mask on here. And we looked at that process in an earlier video. Just hold down Control and you can click and draw anywhere on the model to build up a specific shape. So you can see like this. And if we want to take away from that mask, we can hold down Control and Alt and we can remove some of that mask. So I'm just going to be a little careful with this and try to build up some kind of cool shape that I like. And just imagine if we're going to build a thickness out of this shape. That's basically what we're going to do. So we've got this shape here, and we looked at if we hold down Control and click on the mask, it softens it up like that. Or we can hold down Control and Alt and click on it and tighten the mask up. So we'll tighten that mask up as much as we possibly can, and we'll do the inverse of that mask, and you just hit Control I, or you just click in the open viewport and I'll give you the inverse of that. And then now we're going to put it on this move tool up here, which is one of the transpose tools. So let's go ahead and do that, and you'll see this weird kind of line pop up. Just click anywhere on the surface, just tap once, and you should see it's going to give you a direction. So it's looking at the normal of that surface, and this is basically the direction where the point that we clicked on. You can see if you click around on it, it updates. But if we get kind of in the middle, it's going to give us the normal direction of that area. So the next thing we can do is just go ahead and pull out right here. So you can just take this middle circle, click and drag out. If you hold down Shift, it constrains it to the axis that you're seeing with this line here, like this. That's one way of dragging out. If I turn on the polyframe, let's just take a look at what's going on with Geo. If I hold down Control and click on this little part and pull out, it actually is extruding the model. So it's actually adding new geometry for us in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and click off polyframe and just take a look at this here. And then I'll put it back on the draw mode and hold down Control and then drag in the open viewport to get rid of that mask that you saw here. So you can see it's going to be a little bit hard-edged for us and stair-step. Now that's just due to the resolution that we have of our model currently with the Dynamesh. So I'm going to hit undo on that, and what we could do is inverse this. And if I want to increase the resolution, I'm going to show you how to kind of hold this shape real quick. So let's hit Control I for the inverse of this. And if we turn on polyframe, you can use this functionality. If you draw a mask and you hit Control W, it will turn that mask into a polygroup. So now, when we use Dynamesh, we've looked at this in an earlier video, when we remesh this model, it's actually going to try to preserve these polygroups. So we can get that back if we want to. So let's go ahead and go to the geometry section, and we're going to use Dynamesh, and we're going to up the resolution on this. I'll put it at 650, somewhere right around in there. Okay, and then I'm going to hold down Control and then remesh the model, and it should go through this process of rebuilding the geometry, giving us a new projection of this, and then it should hold these polygroups for us, and then we can take a look at it at that point when it's done. Okay, the model's been remeshed, and you can see this higher resolution that we have. And then now we're going to put it on the select rectangle. It's going to ask me, give me a little warning sign. I'm going to say skip this note until next restart. Again, this is the custom shelf that we built. If you want to get to that tool, hold down Control Shift, just click in there, make sure you're on select rectangle, and then go ahead and hold down Control Shift and click on that polygroup to use the functionality of that polygroup. Now that we have this polygroup isolated, we can just hold down Control and just click once in the viewport to get this to be masked out. So now to bring the whole model back, we just hold down Control Shift and then click in the open viewport, and our model is brought back. If we turn off the polyframe, you can see a little bit more clear this shape that we have. Now it is still kind of well, let's just say it's still stair-step, right? It's still got a problem. So I'm going to deselect the mask, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. So let's just go ahead and isolate this group again, holding down Control Shift, just so we can look at this all by itself. And there's something in the deformation tab that they've added with some of their hard surface stuff, and we're going to get this into this in more in depth later on. But there's a polish by feature button right over here with a slider. And if we take this and we drag it to the right, you can see it's going to start to try to smooth out those edges like this. Okay, and it's only going to push it so far, so we can kind of push it as far as we can with this. And this little dot in there means it's going to try to preserve the overall shape as much as possible. So if we need a much heavier algorithm for figuring out how to smooth this out, we take this little dot off, and you can see that's now an open circle. And then this is going to give us a much more refined polish. And you can see it's really kind of tweaking out the shape. Now the only thing to be kind of cautious about is that this is really kind of changing the shape quite a bit. So if we turn off polyframe and then bring this back, you can see kind of what we've got going on here. Okay, so if I want to smooth out everything that's kind of next to it as well, we can do this functionality. We can hold down Control Shift, click on this piece, hold down Control to mask it, or you could just hold down Control and drag a large thing over that. It's up to you. And now we'll bring the whole model back visibility wise. So we'll hold down Control Shift, click here like this. I'm going to turn off polyframe, and remember that functionality that we have for smoothing a mask. We'll hold down Control and click on that to smooth out our mask. Now if we hit Control I and do the inverse of that, we now have this area that we can kind of smooth, and it's kind of bleeding over into the edges over here. We can hold down Control and click on this mask again if you want to even broaden that out even more. Now we can take this polish by feature and drag the slider. I'm just going to drag it to the right just a little bit, not be too heavy-handed with it, like this. Okay, and if we take it off the mask, now we can see we've got the shape here, right? And then this line looks pretty nice and crisp and clean. So I've been showing you how to select these things and build a mask and everything. When we're using the Transpose tool, there is something that's kind of interesting about this. Is if we just click on here, it builds this thing up. But if we hold down Control while we click, it'll recognize the poly group and automatically mask everything out for us. So it's just got that shape and it's masked. I'm going to turn on the polyframe so we can see these different shapes. And again, if we want to extrude this surface out, we could either just drag it out. That's one way of doing it. But if we want to extrude out, we can hold down Control and drag that out and hold down Shift at the same time. And you can see how it's actually built up the shelf for us, and it's actually given us a new piece of geometry like this, what we got here. So I'm going to get rid of the mask, and now we've got this new shape that's on top of here. Something else that's kind of interesting is we can isolate this visibility wise. Control Shift, just click on it, and then there's something in here in ZBrush that will grow visibility. So if we go down towards the bottom, there's a visibility right in here, and it's under the deformation area. So we'll go to visibility, and you can see there's the hotkey for this is Control Shift X, and you should learn that. And there's a grow and shrink. So you should learn the hotkeys for these, but I'm just going to go ahead and grow this out one, and it looks like it captured almost everything that we were looking for. So I'm going to, after it's grown that out, I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and then just click on this piece here, and that's going to get this ribbon isolated all by itself. And if you remember the hotkey that we did for making polygroups, we can hit Control W. So we've got this polygroup now. We'll bring this back, and you can see I really want to isolate just those two little strips. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift, click this piece of the model, and then I'm going to hold down Control Shift and drag a little thing like this. And we've almost got this thing isolated. Now there's a way that you can hold down Control Shift, drag this out. If you hold down the Alt modifier, it turns from green to red, and you're basically taking away at that time. So again, it's Control Shift, you drag out, and it's green. If we do the space bar, we can drag that around. And at any time you can add the Alt modifier, lift your finger up and off of that, and you can change it from green to red. and red is going to subtract polygons. Okay, so I've just isolated that, and I know it is going to be a little bit difficult for you to use that functionality at first, but you'll get used to it. So we'll do Control W, and that'll make a new polygroup for that. So we can hide everything, and I want this strip all by itself. And so basically I was just clicking on it with Control Shift, and it gave me that. Hold on Control Shift and click that away. And to get the inverse of this, I do Control Shift and drag in the open viewport. And then I need to be able to click on this. If they're really small polygons like this, you might have to make your brush size smaller to get rid of it. So it accidentally selected the body. It's no big deal. Let's do Control Shift, drag in the open viewport, and then I've got this big shape now that I can subtract away. So Control Shift, click on that, and I'll hit Control W, and now we got that ribbon all by itself. So those were some extra steps. I just want to make sure you know that it is possible for you to get this thing to extrude out and then also build up a new polygroup for you. Okay, I know that was a pretty long process. Something else that we could do that would have made our life a little bit easier if we just show like this piece right here, and we're going to get into this more with the hard surface stuff, but might as well just kind of touch on it real quick. If we go under geometry and we go to edge loop and we do this group loops, I'm going to pull this down until we got one loop and turn off all of the polish, and I'm going to say group loops. It's going to build an edge loop around this entire section here like this, and you can see it's really, really small, and we could have done this before we extruded it out. Now if we take this and we hold down Control and click on that, you can see we've got this new piece, and we can put it on scale, and we can move that down. So the reason it scales to the center is I would like it to where you had symmetry on here and you could just kind of do this individually, but if you want this thing to scale down the way that you probably want, you're gonna have to turn off symmetry. So I'm gonna tap X, that's gonna turn off symmetry, and I'll just click and drag down just a little bit to kind of give this a beveled kind of feel to it. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is we've done this on one side like this, and if we want it to look exactly the same on the other side, you can see this side's kind of messed up, but we saw in an earlier video how we can mirror that across. So I've got this on this custom palette, but if you go under deformation, we're just going to mirror it across this direction, and then under geometry we've got modify topology, and we do mirror and weld, which I've got down here like this. So it's going to take a second to think, and it's going to divide the model in half, flip it over, so we should have a symmetrical model when we're done with this process. Okay, so you can see that here, and if you want to be really nitpicky about what you're looking at, if we got in kind of close to this, you can see that it's a little jaggedy and through here, so we could isolate this, mask it, bring that back, and I'll do the inverse of this and maybe soften that mask a little bit, and then we can just use that polish by feature thing. And then I did build this up in my custom menu for myself. Again, that was under deformation, polish by feature. It's the same thing here. And we looked at an earlier video on how to get that custom menu set up. So there's a kind of quick way to take your surface and kind of build it up. You know, you hold the mask, you could be painting with the brushes. We looked at that in earlier videos, but if you want this really kind of nice clean look for a clean shape and adding it from there, that's one way of doing it. There is something else that you would be able to do, but this keeps everything as one piece of the model, right? There is another method that we could be using that will actually take it. So if we take this mask like this, and we want to take this as a surface, I'm just going to draw another additional shape to this just to get something a little more interesting. Let's just do something like that. Okay, I'm going to tighten up the mask a little bit, And then we also have on here, under Subtool, if we go to the Subtools section, there's an extract, and there's a thickness associated with this. So if we just hit extract, we can kind of see what it's going to give us. So it's really close to what we've got going on over here. So if you like that thickness, you can go ahead and hit accept. If you don't like the thickness, you can just rotate the model and it'll get rid of that. It's just basically a temporary visual thing to let you know what's going on. So you could either raise the thickness or lower it. Let's go ahead and hit extract. And I like that shape. And if I like it, let's just go ahead and hit accept, and it'll make a brand new object for you. I do have this on solo, so you wouldn't be able to see that. And it does make a mask for you as well. So if I turn on the polyframe, here's something that's kind of interesting about this. It makes a mask for you, and it builds the polygroups. So you could take that polish by feature that we looked at in the deformation, and you could just drag that slider a little bit. Okay. And it kind of will start to tweak out that shape for you. So if I could drag this up even more, I'm going to get rid of the mask altogether. And I'm going to take this off so it's doing a much stronger kind of polish on it. So you can see pretty quickly we've got a new surface as well. It doesn't have the bevel component, but we could build that out. But there's two different methods for you. This method keeps everything as one piece on the model, and then this one just builds new geometry that you can start to play with as a subtool in there. Okay, so it's up to you to kind of figure out how you kind of want to work, but just thought I'd show you some of these different options for creating some additional geometry on your model.